What if the most profound, soul-stirring art isn't curated in galleries, but was created in the most marginalized corners of our history? In rooms with barred windows, on the frayed edges of prescription charts, by trembling hands in words humming with silence and sorrow. What if the truest map of the human psyche wasn't drawn by theorists, but by those navigating its most extreme and misunderstood territories, using the only language they had left, which was color, line, and form? This video is a pilgrimage into that hidden world. We're carefully unfolding the delicate, often overlooked artistic expression born within the walls of 19th and 20th century mental asylums. In an era where treatments were often brutal and understanding was scarce, the simple act of providing art supplies became perhaps unintentionally an act of profound liberation. For many patients, isolated from their families and severed from their identities, this was not just a prescribed therapy, but a vital act of self-preservation. It was a way to document their reality, to externalize their inner demons and angels, to scream without making a sound, and to leave a permanent mark in a system designed to make them disappear. So remember, we're not here to be mere art critics or to romanticize suffering. We're here to listen, to witness. We will explore these creations not as diagnostic tools or curiosities, but as the profound and deeply human documents they are. Maps of minds navigating realities most of us cannot fathom. This is about honoring the courage embedded in every stroke, the stories whispered from the corners of each page, and reclaiming the narratives of those who were historically denied a voice. We are stepping into the light with the art they were never sure anyone would see, ensuring that their defiant, beautiful statement to human spirit is finally and rightfully remembered. To understand the art created within asylum walls, we must first step away from modern preconceptions and into the complex, often contradictory world of the 19th and early 20th century mental institution. The birth of the modern asylum was not initially a story of pure malice, but one of fraught idealism. Reformers like Philippe Pinel in France and William Tuke in England advocated for what was called moral treatment. This was a radical departure from the chains and dungeons of the past. It proposed that a structured environment of quiet, clean air, purposeful work, and gentle amusement could soothe a troubled mind. The asylum was conceived as a sanctuary, a therapeutic landscape separate from stress of industrial society. It was within this framework of moral management that activities like drawing, painting, and crafts were first introduced. The intention was occupational and disciplinary, to install order, to calm restless minds, and to replace what was seen as chaotic thinking with focused rationality activity. However, this ideal quickly crumbled under the weight of reality. Asylums became overcrowded, underfunded, and understaffed. They evolved from sanctuaries into vast, isolated custodial institutions that historian David Rothman termed as total institutions. Within these walls, a patient's identity was often stripped away, replaced by a diagnosis, a number, and a routine. The therapies often became a tool of control, and the initial humane impulse was overshadowed by a desperate need to manage large populations. It was in this environment of both care and confinement, hope and neglect, that art making took on profoundly different meaning for the patients. The materials they were given, often a pencil or some scrap paper or even makeshift pigments, became something far more significant than a doctor's prescription. This was not merely art therapy as we know it today. It was a private refuge for individuals whose inner experiences were dismissed as delusional or nonsense. The page became a space of undeniable truth. It was a way to document a reality that no one else would listen to reconstruct a shattered identity, to assert autonomy over one small, creative act in a life where every other act was controlled. Therefore, to look at this art is to see a dual history. On one hand, we see the official record, the catalog numbers, the doctor's notes sometimes scribbled on the back, the collection of these works by figures like Hans Prinzhorn, who saw them as evidence of a primitive psyche. On the other hand, and far more importantly, we see the deeply personal human records that exist in spite of the system. Each drawing is a negotiation between the constraints of the institution and the irrepressible urge for expression. A drawing might be on the back of a patient's admission form. A portrait might be crafted from woven threads on a blanket. These works are not naive outbursts from mad minds. They are acts of communication, of memory, of witness, and of resilience. They are the evidence of individuals striving to remain whole, using the only means available to them to bridge the immense gap between the inner worlds and the outer world that had isolated them. They remind us that the need to create is a fundamental human impulse, one that persists even in the most circumscribed of circumstances, not as a symptom of illness, but as a testament to the enduring spirit of the person behind the label. To truly understand the depth of asylum art, we must move beyond the anonymous label of patient and meet the individuals themselves. Their stories, marked in pencil and paint, are not case studies. They are testaments to a creativity that persisted against impossible odds. I have picked out two artists who I will personally delve into. The first one, we need to consider Adolf Wölfli. A young boy in Switzerland, his life was a cascade of trauma, poverty, loss, and abuse. After a conviction of attempted assault, he was admitted to the Waldo Clinic in 1895, diagnosed with schizophrenia, and would never live. It was here in his late 30s that he began to draw, and he didn't stop for over 30 years. Wölfli created a breathtaking alternative universe across 45 volumes comprising of 25,000 pages of narrative, musical compositions, poetry, and mesmerizing illustrations. He called it his Saint Adolf giant creation. His art is a world building of epic proportion, a place where he was no longer a powerless inmate, but Saint Adolf, a heroic figure navigating a cosmos of his own magnificent design. The dense rhythmic patterns and radiating forms feel like a frantic, beautiful attempt to contain an overwhelming psyche within the ordered boundaries of the page. It is a map of a mind seeking to heal itself through creation. Then there is Heinrich Anton Müller, a vine dresser and inventor whose life unraveled, leading to his confinement at the psychiatric clinic of Monsiel. Müller, a man of practical skill, created his own tools from found materials, using his own saliva mixed with coal dust or brick dust for pigment, and crafting intricate drawing devices from window handles and twine. His drawings are hauntingly kinetic. He often depicted cyclical mechanical processes, figures endlessly swinging trees, grinding wheels, or bizarre self-propelled machines. Art historians see in them the frustrated mind of an inventor, a man grappling with forces of production and destruction, of action and futility. His work is not a static image, it is a diagram of struggle, a raw blueprint of a mind trying to understand the mechanics of its own captivity and the relentless cycle of its thoughts. The raw emotionality of these works transcends any medical file. Wölfli's dense compilations aren't just symptoms of grandiosity, they're the profound loneliness of a man constructing a family, a history, and an entire world to replace the one he lost. Müller's mechanistic drawings aren't just preservations, they are the visceral frustrations of hands-on creator rendered powerless, trying to diagram his inner turmoil. We're not looking at pathology, we're looking at direct transcript of a soul. These pieces are unfiltered and unconcerned with artistic trends or approval. They are pure emotion made visible, which is from terror, longing, order, and chaos, searching for meaning. This is how we dispel the stigmas, by seeing Adolf Wölfli not as a schizophrenic. The art forces us to confront a simple, devastating truth. Within the individual, society has historically cast out, labeled and forgotten, existed profound humanity and a creative spirit that would not be extinguished. They did not create because of their illness, but in spite of their circumstances. Their work challenges our very definition of art and artist, asking us to value expression in its purest, most urgent form. In their lines and patterns, we see not the scrambled minds that doctors of the era saw, but a universal language of human struggle and triumph. They remind us that the need to create is perhaps one of our most fundamental instincts. For decades, artworks created within psychiatric institutions remained largely hidden from public view, often stored away in hospital archives or held privately by treating physicians. The process of their rediscovery unfolded through several phases. In the late 19th and early 20th century, pioneering psychiatrists like Hans Prinzhorn began systematically collecting works created by patients in psychiatric institutions across Europe. Prinzhorn's collection, which eventually grew to over 5,000 objects, was initially assembled for clinical study rather than artistic appreciation. He saw these creations as windows into the unconscious expression of a human mind, documenting them with detailed case notes about the creator's mental states and the background. This clinical framing, while limiting in its perspective, nonetheless preserved these works for future generations. Moreover, the Surrealist movement of the 1920s and 1930s played a crucial role in reframing these works as art rather than mere clinical artifacts. Artists like Andre Breton and Max Ernst discovered Prinzhorn's collections and found inspiration in what they perceived as unfiltered creative expression, untouched by academic conventions. They championed these works as evidence of raw visions that could liberate art from traditional constraints. This artistic validation began the process of moving asylum art beyond clinical settings into the realm of aesthetic appreciation. When we stand before a drawing by Adolf Wölfli, its patterns threatening to spill off the page, we are not just looking at historical artifacts. We are receiving a message in a bottle, sent from the farthest shores of human experience. This art teaches us that resilience is not the absence of suffering, but the defiant act of creation within it. These artists were stripped of their liberty, their social roles, and often their dignity, yet they asserted the one thing that could not be taken from them, their inner world. With a stub of pencil, some scrap paper, or homemade pigment, they built kingdoms where they were sovereign, documented realities only they could see, and forged beauties from the raw materials of their pain. This legacy directly challenges our modern perspectives on mental health. For decades, the prevailing narrative was one of pathology, of broken minds that needed to be fixed. This art reframes that story into one of adaptation and communication. It asks us to shift our gaze from what is wrong with a person to what is strong within them. The question changes from how do we cure this to what is this person trying to tell us? What world are they building to survive? This isn't to romanticize suffering, but to honor the sophisticated human responses to it. In the present day, this historical evidence empowers a more nuanced dialogue, one that values neurodiversity, listens to first-person experiences, and recognizes that healing can look like creation, not just cure. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.